O ha shaksiam. Utigwisi chus dwal tias lachil. Utigwisi chus dwal tias swoke chus. Guahali cho tia lok chus. Guahali cho tia siaya chus. Guahali cho tia de isha chus. Olbasista.
Adultsa tsitsta, stetya tsitsta. I am here with my daughters today, and we are on our ancestral grounds where we have gathered camas for many, many generations.
Something to note about camas, or abit, the edible camas has this blue flower. So when you harvest it, we make sure that we keep the bulb attached to the flower so we have the right one, because there's a couple different kinds. So in this area, there's our edible camas, but there's also death camas. And death camas has a lot of little white flowers on it versus edible camas, which has these kind of bigger blue flowers. So to assure that we have the right camas, we just make sure to keep the flower attached. And as we harvest, we make sure to do it in the springtime so we have the blossoms available. It's a bit of a process to dig the roots and to harvest. And historically, our people would use things like ironwood and bones like antlers and things like that instead of more modern tools that we have now. So you're going to take your tool and go about 1 inch away from where you see the flower blooming, and you're going to wedge it in a few inches deep. And after you've loosened the soil, you can use your hand to carefully remove the bulb. This is a good one right here. They're really beautiful and they contain so much medicine, and not only in the bulbs themselves, but also being able to harvest them is medicine for your soul. These were our form of starch before we were introduced to things like rice and wheat and potatoes. And they contain other things aside from starch, like inulin, which is really good for folks who are struggling with diabetes. You can definitely taste not only the sweetness from the root itself, but also the connection as well, which I think is really important as an Indigenous person to kind of feed your spirit as well. To start off cooking our camas, we have to clean it. So after you harvest it, you take off all the flaky layers that easily come off. And after you do that, you should have this beautiful kind of caramel color. And this is going to also be the color of the finished product when you're done cooking it. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using a crock pot, and it's a very slow process to cook camas to really release the inulin that's inside of it. So we're going to start by using waxier leaves. So these are salal leaves. You can also use leaves like Oregon grape or swamp leaf. So you start off by making a bed at the bottom of your crock pot, and then from there you're going to make a small bed in another type of leaf, and this time we're going to be using fern. So you take all of your camas and you place it on the inside of your leaves, and you kind of just fold it over, again making kind of a package of camas, and you could bring that into your crock pot. After you do that, you top it off with more leaves of your choice. We're using more fern, and this kind of creates a safe place for the camas where it's completely covered. And after you do that, you add just maybe about a cup of water, enough so it's steaming and so it can cook. And you kind of keep adding water for the next 36 hours. Every 2 hours, you'll be checking up on it to make sure it's still steaming and cooking. And as you do this, the camas itself will be releasing inulin, which is really good medicine for you, and one of the main reasons why our people were able to stay healthy for so long. It's a really great starch for you to eat, and it pairs really well with seafood such as salmon or shellfish and a variety of other foods. The story goes that there was once a village. They lost all their sources of food, and the village became very sad. One family in particular, a grandmother and her children, they started to cry and cry, and the grandmother couldn't stand seeing her grandchildren cry. So she went out in search of food. She came across a hilltop, and then she realized that maybe she wasn't going to be able to find food. She was very sad because of this, and she started to cry, and as she was crying, she sank into the soil. The grandchildren felt the need to search for their grandmother, so they in turn started looking high and low, and they came across the same hillside. And one of the granddaughters stopped for a second as they reached the top and said, "Wait a second, I feel her beneath us." They began to dig, and then they came across a bulb, which was camas. And the grandmother had turned herself into a camas bulb to give food back to the community. Then the community was happy and they were able to sustain themselves with camas. So reflecting on the grandmother's story, here are some questions to think about. The first one is, what does the grandmother's story teach us? What I think about is how important food is and how food can sustain an entire community if you let it. Another answer I heard is how it symbolizes hope and how important generational wealth is, and how important it is to ask for teachings and when the opportunity arises, and to listen to them when they're given to you. Another question to ponder is, how do plants, animals, and people take care of us? Something I think about is how when we're younger, our parents and guardians take care of us, and then when we grow old, it's our turn to take care of them. And plants take care of us in so many ways. And watching them grow helps our mental health. In eating them replenishes our bodies, and the list really is endless. One more question is, who do you care for? It's really hard to just say, obviously, one person, but some people I care for in particular are my family and my community.
Oh Creator, I'd like to thank you for this day. Thank you for this gathering. I ask that you please bless our friends and our family and our elders and our ancestors.